Okay, hi everyone. So in this tutorial, we're going to focus on making a vase and making the flowers. The reason we're doing these two objects is to introduce some different approaches to 3D modeling, and depending on what it is you're making, some of these approaches might be useful. Okay, so let's look at the vase first. I'm going to turn off some of my collections here. I'll keep the architecture, I'll turn off the pens. Sculpture can go. Okay, I'm a bit ahead with my mechanism here. I'll turn off my flowers and I'll turn off the previous vase I've made. I'm going to encourage you to keep working in collections like this. You can see as I turn them off, it's very, very useful. So as we work today, I'll make a new collection. I'll call it Vase 2, and you can see, it's very convenient just to turn them on and off. The reason that looks a little strange, I've got two vases here, one with a texture and one without. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I'm going to add a different type of object, Shift A. This time I'm going to add a curve. Okay, so what's a curve? This thing's popped in here. If I go into edit mode, it's got these handles, and if I press G for grab, you can see that instead of a mesh, it's a curve object. You can think of this a little bit like the difference between vectors and bitmap graphics. Vectors are defined by curves, like the font on your computer. Bitmap is defined by pixels. It's not exactly the perfect analogy, but a curve object is defined by curves and control points, whereas a mesh object is defined by polygons, vertexes, and edges. So we're going to use this curve. First of all, I'll scale it down, and this curve is going to give us the curve of our vase. So I'll go into my front view by just clicking on the gimbal here, and I'll press R90. So my curve is now vertical, and now I'll press RZ90, and now my curve is, still vertical, but we can see the direction of the handles. Now, what I can do is I'm going to just apply its scale. Apply scale. I might even just look at my books and see how big does my vase need to be. Yeah, okay, let's keep that for now. All right, so we're going to do this the really, really simple way, just with a couple of modifiers. In previous semesters, we did a more complex way, but let's keep it really simple. So here's my curve. I'm going to go into the modifiers panel. I'll add a modifier. In generate, we're going to use screw. First, by default, we're getting something that looks a little bit weird. But it is sort of doing something close to what we want the vase to do. It's just spinning around the wrong way. The other thing is that we've rotated our curve. So let's apply our rotation. Control A to apply rotation, or object apply rotation. And okay, so we're already facing the right way because our modifier says rotate on the Z axis. If I change it, it'll rotate on different axes. Oh no, there you've got almost a hat or a symbol if you're making a drum kit. But okay, let's keep it on the Z axis. So it's okay, but it's too pointy at the top. I'm just going to go into the front view, tab into edit mode, A to select both of these handles, and I'm just going to press GX and I'm going to move them further apart. That's basically what that's doing is if I hide this modifier, it's sort of saying that the center of the curve, if you can see I'm rotating here, it's actually not where the curve is anymore. In edit mode, I moved the curve, but in object mode, it still thinks it's in the same place. The effect is I've just made the middle of the curve here. So now when we rotate it, we get something that is very, very close to a vase. Okay, so the next thing we'll need to do is we're going to add a second modifier, which will be, if we search, solidify. And what solidify will do is it will give us a thickness. And okay, it's not going to fill the bottom of our vase. We can come back and fix that later. I'm just going to go into my solid view so we can see things properly. It looks like this by default is on shade smooth, so somewhere this is being shaded smooth. I wonder if we can see it shaded flat. Here we go. Let's untick that. Okay, that's a little bit better for us to see because we can see the resolution of our curve. And that's because in the screw modifier, we've got this steps thing. I can put this to like 64 and we've got more geometry to work with. Okay, the other thing I can do is in edit mode, looking at my curve, I can move the curve. So I can just grab a handle and press G for grab, and we can change this vase into any shape we want. I can rotate, or I can scale the handle, but also I can subdivide and add some more points. So if I select both and right click and hit subdivide, now we've got a new handle here, and we can shape the vase to anything we want. To match my texture, I was going to go for sort of like a Chinese vase thing. I don't know, what shape is a Chinese vase? Chinese blue and white vase. Okay, bunch of different shapes. We've got, what's one we can do? Relatively simple. That's pretty good. Maybe let's go for something like that. I've just got a texture that matches this, so I thought I'd stay on style. Okay, so let's see if I can do that. So that will just be coming out a bit more. Maybe, was this a bit rounder, something like that? And then we just want to have a little lip here. So if I rotate that, that's pretty close. Okay, I can, if I want another handle, I can also press E for extrude, and I'll get another handle. And hey, look, that's even that's even closer. Okay, so I guess we can do that. It might make our texturing a little more complicated, but okay, let's just see how it works out. It's also made the vase very big, so I'm just going to scale the whole thing down a bit, because otherwise I think it just looks a bit funny. And I can GX and make it come together a bit more. That looks nice. And now I'll just put it back. Something like that. That looks fine. All right, so now let's put it in a collection. I'm going to name this curve Vase 1 underscore modifiers. Vase underscore 1 underscore modifiers. And I'm going to press M for move, and I'll put it in a new collection, and I'll call it Vase 2, only because I already have a vase. So just for your benefit, you can call it vase. You don't need the 2. All right, so it's almost done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, Shift D, and just left click, and I'll call this one Vase underscore applied. Now, the reason I'm doing that is I want to add a texture, and to make a texture we need, much like the book, we need UVs, and for that we need a mesh. At the moment, this is not actually a mesh, it's still the curve. You can see here, this triangle in Blender means it's a mesh object. This little squiggle here means it's a curve. So we can't do our UV unwrapping. And also, if I press apply to these modifiers, it won't work because we need to apply it onto a mesh type object. So there's actually, we can solve this in one click. If I right click and say convert to mesh, it just applies the modifiers and we get this mesh. So now if I go into edit mode, I've just got a 3D mesh of this vase, which I'm guessing still probably has, okay, I've got my other vase is still visible. I'm going to hide that one. I've probably got still a hole in the bottom, I'm guessing. Yep, maybe let's fill that just to be complete. So the reason there's a hole is just the way that our screw modifier worked. So I've just pressed the question mark button here to isolate select, and I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to press 3 to make sure I'm in face select, and I'm going to select all of these faces, and I think it's shift command left click. Okay, it selects the distance between the last 2 clicked, and then I'm just going to press X and delete the faces, and now I'll go into edge select by pressing 2, and I think maybe shift option click. I've got the whole ring, and I will just press F for fill, the letter F, and the same thing again, shift option click and F for fill. Okay, so now we've got a vase that technically we could, you could 3D print it or do whatever you like. It's a watertight mesh now. All right, so now let's put a texture on it. It's looking good. Our scale is applied, our rotation is all neutral, so we're in the right sort of territory. Now, if you don't see this shading area here, you can go into the shading tab, or whatever. If you have a spare window here, you can just click in this little menu here and just make sure you're on the shader editor. We did this with the book. So I'll make a new shader and I'll call it Vase 2. And now I've already downloaded this texture. If you just go online, you can definitely find one. If you go Chinese blue and white vase texture, you should find a whole bunch of things. Or if you're not getting, okay, so that would work. We might have to be more specific and say texture map, just so we know it's for 3D graphics. So something like that would work, something like that. Any two-dimensional image. These won't work because it's not a flat image, just exactly like you did the book. Or we could go blue and white ceramic texture map. Okay, look, there's heaps. So just find something that you think is cool, that you think is nice. I'll go back to mine, and I've got one that I've already downloaded in my Finder window here. This is the one I've downloaded, so I'm just going to drag it into my shader editor, and then let's just get it mapped properly. So if I now go into my material preview mode, I've got this texture Vase 2 is here, and we can check it by if we change the color, we should see it. If you're not seeing any color change either, you haven't put the material on the object. You can always check if you've got the object selected. It should appear here, or you can even select a different texture. If I put, that's the texture from my pen, but I wanted the one I just made, Vase 2. And instead of that color, oh, also, if you're not seeing the texture, check you're in either material preview or rendered. Solid mode won't show the texture, wireframe definitely won't show it, rendered will show it, and material preview will show the texture. Okay, so now I'm just going to connect this and let's see what it looks like. Not very good. We've got the texture going all the way inside the vase. That's not what we want, and this part's way too big. So let's just do a new UV unwrap. So I'll go into my UV editing tab, and this will probably have some UVs. They look not too bad. We've got, like, if I select them all and I just scale it on the y-axis, okay, here's a trick. If you want to see your UVs a little bit better here, you can click this button. This is overlays. So because we're in edit mode, we're going to see all the edges and all the things that are selected are going to be yellow. If we don't have a whole lot of things selected, we won't see the UVs. So to see the UVs, you have to have everything selected on your object, but you can also hide the overlays so you can still see your object a bit better. And now I'm just scaling the UVs that are already on the object, and I can GZ and move them up and all sorts of things. But let's just remap it completely and see if we can get a nicer result, just in case yours hasn't come in. This is already pretty close, but we can have a go ourselves, just so we know what we're doing. All right, so if I'm going to UV unwrap this, I'm going to press the question mark button to isolate select, and we need to project new UVs. If I select all my faces here and I say UV, if I press the letter U to unwrap, and then I say like cube projection, we'll get this wacky thing where if I hide these, everything is all mismatched. And we've got, if I select the islands, there'll be all these different shapes. This worked for the book, having the book wrapped like a cube made sense, but this vase is round. So we don't want a snapshot from all the different views. We actually want something that looks around it, so our texture is continuous. So we're going to use a different mode of texture projection. For a square object, a square UV projection is perfect, but for a round object, it's no good. All right, so let's just set up our object a little bit for UV projection. What we're going to do is a cylinder projection. And first of all, I'm just going to do what's called marking a seam. So I'm just going to select an edge loop. Oh, we've got all our edges selected. I'm going to go Shift Option and get an edge loop like that. That's pretty good. So we've got a loop going all the way around, inside and out. Think of it like we're unwrapping a present. Somewhere we might need to cut the paper, or if we're unwrapping a banana, somewhere you need to make a slice on the skin to peel it off. And so we need to have a little place on our object that's called a seam, and that's where our texture is going to start and finish. So I'm going to right click and say mark seam, And then I'm going to do the same on our base, right click, mark seam, and I might do it on the top, mark seam. Okay, that hopefully that should be enough to get us where we need to get. So now I'm going to select everything again, and I'm going to say U for unwrap, and I'm going to say cylinder projection. And it doesn't look good right now. We've got something strange going on, but let's see if we can find the right setting here. Okay, so if I go into my cylinder projection and I set it to align to object, we seem to get pretty much the type of UVs we're looking for, which is just this more or less rectangle of coordinates. So now if I go back into my material preview mode, I go into edit mode, I'll turn off my overlays, and now if I scale Y, oh, looks like I didn't have everything selected. Hold on a moment. Okay, we've got our UVs are overlapped here. Okay, so this looks like this is our inside. Okay, that's all right. That's good actually that they're separate there, because what I'm gonna do is just a bit of a lazy trick. I'm just going to put our inside UVs here, because we don't decorate the inside, right? Inside's going to be white. It's these ones that I want to have properly mapped to my object. So if I now press scale Y, what we want to do is we want to scale them such that the pattern is, at the correct aspect. To me, that's warped vertically. So I'm going to scale them until the flowers look about right, according to the pattern. Let's have a look at the pattern. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I'm really just going to do it visually to see how many repeats we want. We're going to have a seam where we marked our seam, and our texture has a little bit of a white bit at the end, so it's not a perfectly seamless texture, so we're going to have a couple of seams. But something like that, to me, the pattern looks too big, that's too small. Somewhere around there I think looks good. Let's just go back to our reference. Do we have a banded design? I think most of these have an image. That's a little closer. Okay, maybe I've gone, okay, maybe something more like that, and then I guess I can choose which part of the pattern I want to use. I can even match the appearance a bit. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then the last thing I'll do, if I look at these, these have sort of a white area up the top. So what I'll do is I'm just going to grab my UVs that are at the top. I'll turn on my overlays again, and I'll go into wireframe mode, and I'm just going to make sure I just want to select that whole ridge there, something like that. And again, I'm going to just do a little bit of a lazy trick. Whoops. I'm going to scale down these and just put them in a white area of my texture so that we've got something like that. And I want to get that ridge there too. That doesn't look great. So let's just select Shift Option. I'll get that whole loop and find that UV, which is here, and I'll just also put that in a white area. Okay, that's not bad. Now, if I right click, I'm going to say Shade Smooth, which will make it look a little bit better. And then I'll just play with the texture a little bit more. I just pressed question mark to get my objects back. Let's go into the shading editor. It looks like I've got my scene playing. I'll press spacebar to stop it. Okay, so I'll rotate my vase, RZ, and see if I can just get a nice bit where we don't see our textured seam. So the reason we're seeing more than one seam, I should just go over that. Our texture has this white area here. So it's not a perfect repeat. So I can show you videos, maybe we can link it in the tutorial. If you want a perfectly seamless texture that repeats, you can either do that yourself in Photoshop, you can just cut things and mirror them, or you can just download a seamless texture. So that's why we've got the seam where we put it on our hold on, whoops, don't want to rotate those faces. Our seam where we put it should be here. There's definitely a seam there, but these are from the texture itself. That's why we're seeing more than one. Okay, but for our thing, I think we'll be able to get away with that. Okay, last little improvements I'll make to the vase is let's make it a little bit shiny. So I'll turn the roughness down because it's ceramic. Maybe like quite shiny, like maybe like, yeah, 0.1. And we can even play with the clear coat. This is sort of, you know, it's a setting that's really good for like cars and stuff. Like a car is like, you know, it'll be red, but then it'll have this like clear shiny coat on top. I'm just going to turn that up a little bit, and we can play in our render later. But that's sort of given it that glazy sort of, like there's an extra layer of something shiny on top. Okay, so that's it for our vase. I'll stop this recording here and then I'll start a new recording for the flowers.